joining us tonight. Thank you for recording.
Mm-hmm. I remembered.
You remembered. That's great. All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Hopefully a couple more people will join us. But if I could ask Brother Egbert, could you give us our opening prayer tonight?
I think so.
Okay.
I might be distracted because I have two windows open.
Okay.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be able to meet at this ERRS meeting. We ask you to bless those that attended and those who are teaching and those who come. We say in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
That was annoying with my two devices.
Oh, gotcha. Those kind of windows open. Got it now. I was trying to figure out what that was all about. All right. Well, we do have some guests here tonight. I would like to welcome Sister Merritt from the San Diego mission. She's our mission leader's wife, Elder Merritt. And then also we have Elder and Sister Stringham, who is a senior missionary couple in the San Diego mission. And Sister Merritt, you've asked them to be liaison now at our monthly emergency response meetings. And so we welcome Elder and Sister Stringham tonight. And we look forward to getting to know you better and chatting about emergency response so that we can all be on the same page. And anyone here for the very first time that's newly called, or tell me, Bill Snapper, did you get your audio fixed? Nope. Oh.
Trying to mute it, leave and come back in.
Yeah, you're in there now. We can hear you.
We hear you.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Good. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I have Howard Cottam with me. Hi. He's our assistant. So we have duplicity.
Good job. That's amazing. Well, that's that's the gold standard. We aim for duplicity.
We're Escondido State.
Yeah, with the Escondido steak, right? Oh, and
Yeah,
Bob and Hamill. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. All right, so just for the benefit of our guests, the people attending this meeting tonight are the stake representatives in emergency response. There may be some here joining us from communications, and then I've invited all the appropriate leadership over emergency response. And of course, Sister Jimenez being our regional, I always have to think about it. The wording, how does it go again? Self-reliance and welfare manager, regional self-reliance and welfare manager. Hopefully I got that right. And we always enjoy this collaboration, talking emergency response and kind of getting everybody on the same page. But we have some particular things this year that we're doing that are different than we've done in the past in regards to our communication exercises coming up. And we're really stressing that our wards and stakes have, if possible, a spring exercise. Some stakes are already doing this. We'd like everyone to have a bi-month or bi-yearly exercise, one in the spring and one in the fall. And the fall one, we're giving specific, what's the word? We're specific attention to developing a more hands-on boots on the ground communication and in order to kind of help wards and stakes wrap their head around that, we're giving smaller incremental steps in the way of encouraging them to do quarterly exercises to build up that program. So that's explained further on in the agenda, but those are kind of some of the specific things that we're really targeting this year. So before we go any further, I'd like to turn the time over to Sister Merritt and talk to us a little bit more about how they in the mission home have a chain of command to keep track of the missionaries and how that works. And then what they would like us to do as wards and stakes as a redundant or additional method of checking on the missionaries and how we would report that up the chain of command as well. So Sister Merritt.
Very good. Well, it's nice to be here tonight. My husband and I have been here in San Diego. We had a baton passing June 30th. And so we're still in our first year and coming down the learning curve on many things. But we did feel that it was important to have an emergency plan in place. I grew up in Orange County, California, with earthquake drills and school and kind of some of that awareness. And some of the experiences that we have had, we've lived the last 22 years in the greater New York City area. So we were there during 9/11, the terrorist attacks. We were there for the 2003 blackout and experienced some very interesting things that have really informed our way of thinking with our missionaries here and keeping them safe and understanding where they are. When unexpected events occur, because we know that that can happen, whether it be a natural disaster or some other thing that occurs. I know President was actually serving in the New York North Mission Presidency in September of 2001. And at that time, there were a couple of, they were, of course, concerned about accounting for all of the missionaries in the mission, as were wards and stakes for accounting for their people. There was one set of missionaries that late in the day they had not heard from. They had accounted for all of the missionaries, and it was not until the evening that they heard from these missionaries who had been in southern Manhattan, put on a ferry because they were evacuating the southern part of the island and sent over to New Jersey. Once they landed in New Jersey, they made their way to the mission president's home there. It took them the entire day to get there. And from there, they were able to call and let the mission president know that although they were out of the mission, they were safe. And everybody celebrated and rejoiced that we could account for all of our missionaries. So that said, we understand how important it is to have something in place so we can know as soon as possible how to get a hold of the missionaries. Of course, every mission is designed with districts and zones. A district would basically equate to a ward boundary, and a zone equals a stake boundary. And we have district leaders, we have zone leaders. And so our missionaries are instructed that if something happens, they are to report to those district and zone leaders, and so that we can then, from the mission office, know what's happening. We have established with the Washington Everett mission, we have a sister mission relationship with them. During the blackout in 2003, as well as the 9/11 event that I just described, we discovered that my husband was in New York City. We were living in Connecticut. We could not call each other on our cell phones because the lines were jammed. And so we could communicate to each other via his parents, who were living in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and they were far enough removed that they could receive our calls, even though we could not call into the area. And this is one reason that we have a sister mission established, so that if the phone lines within San Diego and or Imperial Valley are jammed for whatever reason, we have an outside, out of the area location to call who can account for our missionaries and from whom we can get information. And so our missionaries have these pink cards with instructions and phone numbers in their apartments, giving them instructions Periodically, they'll receive, recently received some information about flooding and how they could stay safe during flooding with all of the rains that we had in January. And these are things that we try to do. We do not have a system for accounting for our missionaries if there is no phone and internet, and we don't have a means of communicating that way. And when I met Terri recently, we chatted about this, and she described that this committee is focusing on boots on the ground and what to do if there was a large failure that took out power and internet and some of our means of communicating. So what we are looking at doing, and we're still in process, for instance, this list that I have now is from prior to the transfer we just had on Tuesday. So Tuesday we had more missionaries coming in. We're opening up some apartments, closing other apartments. But this list is organized by zone. And we would like to determine, there are some missionaries who live outside the ward boundaries of where they are serving. And so our project is to get these apartments of where our missionaries currently live organized according to the ward boundaries in which they are located, and onto the radar of each of those wards, so that one, in a boots on the ground situation, our missionaries can be accounted for, and that they can also be a resource to help as boots on the ground with locating ward members and individuals and serving in any safe way that they can. They would, of course, need to remain with their companions unless some emergency situation caused a separation, and there are times when something like that happens. They would need to, abide by the standards and dress appropriately. They can dress appropriately for service to provide. We would want them to be wearing their badges and doing some of those common sense things, but we would very much want them to be able and ready to assist. It sounds like we've lived through a lot of emergencies. It doesn't feel like that until we start describing it, but we were also in the Northeast area when Hurricane Sandy hit, or Superstorm Sandy. And if some of you may be familiar with, but there were many parts of New York that were flooded. The subway system was flooded. It caused subways to be down in certain areas for a while. There were many buildings that had to be rewired in the New York City area. There were many areas that, due to trees falling and power lines being down, that were without power for extended periods of time. During that period of time, our stake and many of the stakes in the area that were not directly impacted, we were on the perimeter. We did have some impact, but not disabling. But we were able to have 10-minute sacrament meetings where we gathered in our jeans and partook of the sacrament and had a testimony. And then we hopped on buses and went with our yellow helping hand vest to areas. And the missionaries were very key in helping with some of the organizations. And it was just so, the first week there was total disarray. It was not organized. And by the second week, it was very much organized, and we were able to provide much more meaningful service to those individuals at that time. And so we would anticipate that we would want to assist in that way if needed. So just a quick rundown as I look over this list of apartments that needs to be updated. We are approximately 99 apartments. Some of those are senior missionaries, such as the Stringhams, who are joining us tonight and will be liaison and plan to attend these meetings, keep our list up to date, keep stake clerks informed as apartments change, and let us, kind of be up to date on this communications. But so we have, that is made up of approximately 99 apartments with roughly 16 senior missionaries, and the remainder young missionaries. I don't believe we've included the Mormon Battalion. They have recently put their sisters all together in one location, which means that they have a little bit of a simpler process. However, they do have their sisters serving at the temple and some other offsite places. And so we probably should include their apartments here. We need to have a conversation with the Mormon Battalion about that. Of these 13 or 99 apartments, 13 are currently bikes, approximately, which could be helpful with some instances. So anyway, that's kind of the information. I don't know if there's any questions you have. I'm not sure if I have answers, but I'm happy to field any questions about our situation.
How many, excuse me, how many missionaries, excuse me, I've been struggling with this voice. How many missionaries are you caring for now?
With this transfer, we're at 184. It fluctuates a bit. We've been getting in more than we've been sending home, but I think that our next transfer will be a small number coming in. So we'll go downward a little bit. So there's always a little bit of a fluctuation. But 170 to 184-ish of our younger missionaries is about our complement.
With 16 senior missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't include the service missionaries.
No, we do not. It's the Shoops who have, kind of work with the senior missionaries, and the senior missionary or the service missionaries, senior service missionaries are, they're living in their home wards. And so they're kind of accounted for that way. Whereas our missionaries, I don't believe their apartments are on ward records. They're, and so that was just one of the things that made me think we need to find a way to be organized about them being included and also being a tool to utilize when you have a boots on the ground, when we have a boots on the ground situation in San Diego.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, just real fast. Do we need to account for those missionaries to the church before we're allowed to continue with our comms? The service missionaries, not the standard missionaries.
Well, I think those who are assigned to contact them, who are whatever area they are in, that should certainly be their focus. Others who don't have missionaries in their assigned boots on the ground districts don't need to count on them before they count on others.
So if they're a service missionary, they're considered a local part of the ward, and we don't need to account for them. Is that correct?
That is correct, and they'll be they'll be accounted in that ward count.
Correct.
They'll
Yep.
be on the ward directory in the state.
I'm just concerned about, the church doesn't want to hear from us really until we account for all the missionaries. I just want to make sure we've got the right missionaries we're trying to account for.
Yeah.
Well, should we ask Sister Jimenez or Brother Kennedy? Do you have any
It
thoughts?
would just be the full-time missionaries. The service missionaries are, as was said earlier by Sister Merritt, they live at home. They're accounted for. They have ministering brothers and sisters in the ward, and they're already accounted for. So when we report missionaries, it's going to just be the full-time missionaries and full-time senior missionaries.
This might be a good time to interject that many stakes and have wards that have membership outside of their ward boundaries and stake boundaries. You have, singles wards and some special language wards. We have deaf branch in our stake. We could talk about this in more detail later, but they need to be considered. And what we did when we were in a mid-singles ward working there is that we were reaching out to the stakes, or rather the wards in where those members lived, contacting the bishop and asking them to make sure that they were included in their emergency contact statistics.
And that sounds like a piece that'll always be a work in progress as people move in and out. So we need to identify somebody that could be kind of eyes on that list at all times and updating us. What would that look like? A representative in the ward?
Well, of course, this whole plan doesn't work if we don't keep the numbers updated and locations updated. So
Yeah.
emphasize that first, saying it has to be done at regular intervals, at least quarterly. But I think monthly would be you know, a better, because you never know when it's going to happen. If it happens at the end of a quarter and you're not updated, then you might have a problem. But, you know, that'll depend on the individual awards. But
So
just
is that a responsibility we need to encourage mission leaders, war mission leaders, or whatever we're calling them now, to take on, so that they've got a contact for those guys?
For the missionaries, are you asking?
Yep.
Well, certainly. So for the missionaries, our cycle on updating is every transfer cycle, because every transfer we have missionaries go home and missionaries come in. And so, and that's a 6-week cycle. So it would be 6 weeks from Tuesday, which, you know, we're March 28th is our next. And so that's when we would be looking at updating our things. And, you know, in my mind, an electronic update is not sufficient, because if indeed we have full outage or, you know, whatever, we would need to have a hard copy. So I believe what the Stringhams will kind of be managing for us is that as those changes happen with our missionaries in and out, apartments changing, we let one go, we take one on, their intent would be to keep clerks in the various units up to date on where our missionaries are, so that we would, you know, be able to account for them that way. And we would just have to get into a habit of each transfer. We now have our hard copy printed with our, you know, in probably 2 or 3 locations, because our communications are going to be more complicated. And I don't know what this committee, I mean, what is your means of communicating with Salt Lake or somebody if we're boots on the ground? Is there a ham radio operator? How are they getting information communicated within our area?
That's a good question, Mike. We hadn't really talked about for the fall how we're going to do that as far as getting information to Sister Jimenez.
That's right. Well, I do have a plan that I'm going to implement, and we're going to have some people up in her area who will reach out to her, and she will be able to have an amateur radio that she can monitor and listen to. And the plan now is that we will report to a repeater in that area, so she can listen, and we will give the report and she can listen, and we'll give it and it'll be confirmed back and forth. So we can transfer that information without her having a license. We plan on implementing that for local leaders as well, stake leaders and bishops and things like that as a backup, but if those repeaters are down, which they could be down, then, look, we have 72 hours. I figure it's going to take 72 hours before we get everything, calculated, where we think, okay, we know who we don't know, and we know who we know. We can't get a hold of these other people, and we keep trying, but it'll take 72 hours. So some things are going to come back online. And as far as how we report, we're implementing the boots on the ground, but amateur radio operators currently are not being asked to make any reports. And so they're the boots on the ground part of it. How do we report this information to stake leaders and ward leaders is still not a completely answered question in my understanding.
Okay.
Just a question right there.
Yes.
I'll bring him here. Hey, grateful to serve, and thank you for all you've done in past months and years. Don't know how long all of you have been serving on this. Just had one question with the last response. You mentioned who is the sister? I was going to write it down. Who will have a ham radio, and you say it's not up and running yet?
Sister Jimenez, I need it. She's up near Fontana. So I need to get somebody, some people up there who are involved in emergency communication in Fontana. I do have a contact who lives there, and I'm going to ask him. We have to figure out how we're going to get the radios and who's going to pay for them and how we distribute them, but we will get her a radio so that if she's interested, if she feels comfortable doing it. But that is one plan that will let us pass information with amateur radio operators. There are some problems, some little things and glitches that we haven't figured out yet. That's the best way to do it. But as it stands now, amateur radio operators are not passing information to bishops or to stake presidents.
So I guess another question, Mike, is let's say we're going to boots on the ground. So are we talking, Terry? Are we talking, we are now boots on the ground? We're talking diminished communications, correct? Is
Correct.
that what okay. So do the missionaries on that pink card have specific instructions if cell phones and computers are down? Are they walking to a church or to a local leader's house that is in the area they're in to report in? You're on mute.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. They do not have boots on the ground. It tells them, if you need to leave your apartment, take your emergency preparedness kits and water. Be prepared to give blessings. It says after contacting the mission, they should offer assistance to the stake president or bishop, but it doesn't talk about if they cannot text or phone. And well, let's see. Let me back up on that. If the telephone system is inoperative, the area emergency response communication services will be activated and communications can be completed through the local stake and ward ERC representatives. I don't know how current this is, and it might be time for us to update the cards. As a last resort, here are 2 additional contacts, and they have Terri Sorensen and Steve Early. Is Steve on this call?
That can be changed. He has been Mike Guyman.
Okay, Mike Diamond.
Be the name
Yeah.
there.
So they have phone numbers and no addresses, but there is an AD6VI. Is that a handle? Is it what?
Mike
and-
Guyman. Know
Yeah,
that?
that's Brother Early's call sign.
A
And
call sign.
Yeah.
Okay.
it used to be that amateur radio drove all of this type of stuff. I mean, amateur radio operators were planning the exercises and the drills. It's that's not that way anymore. So we're still just trying to figure it out. One of the things that we'll be doing is we'll be focusing on other types of radios that can be used. Where you don't need a license, or maybe you have to pay a fee or something like that. So we're still in the process of developing without amateur radio operator being the source that is being looked to get that information. Then we have to figure out how we are going to get that information. And you have to remember,
I think it'd be helpful to have from the mission. So what do you want the missionaries to do? Because we can tell you, but every stake will be a little bit different. For example, in the San Diego stake, when you have a bunch of missionaries that live out of their area. So if you're supporting the Pacific Beach ward and you live up in the Claremont ward, there's a ground out situation. So there's no comms, and they're not going to make that walk because that's going to be a long walk at that point because traffic is snarled. Who do they report to in the Claremont? I mean, what should be the instructions from the mission presidency to the missionaries so that it's a standard thing that's in the white binder, so that when you check in that if comms are down, I live in this apartment, I don't live in my ward, I go to this local leader for this ward who will report me in as good.
Right.
So what does the mission want them to do? And then we support that is my guess.
And I'm not sure that this is a final answer, and probably this is partly in consultation with this group. First of all, I think that most of the missionaries, they tend to live close to their ward, as close as possible. There are some situations where they live a little bit of a distance away, but I believe for reporting in a boots on the ground circumstance, that are qualms down, and I'm not sure I'm really familiar enough on all of your terminology, but I think that it would be best for them to report in the location where the apartment is. And so we will, in some instances, for instance, that might be a 4-person apartment. So there are 4 missionaries living in one apartment. It may be one set resides in that ward, and another set is kind of living there because the apartment will accommodate them, but they're traveling to a nearby neighboring ward or some such thing. Or they might be in a ward that has a larger geography, such as a YSA or the ASL ward that covers a full stake or something like that. And so part of what the Stringhams will do with our list of apartments is identify which ward the apartment is located in, And that would be the ward to which they would report in a boots on the ground situation. Does that make sense?
That's perfect. That's the kind of guidance that we need to understand for each physical location where the missionaries are. For example, they're out tracting in their area and there's a boots on the ground situation. They go to their area leadership. They're at home in the middle of the night out of the area and they're in a 4-person apartment and something happens. Where do they report to? So there are specific instructions in each white binder for each area or each apartment so that they know where they're reporting. And then I guess we'll have the Stringhams talk to the missionary representatives or the clerks so that we understand as we're reporting in where we should see those reports coming from. Because Mike's always been concerned about, we've got to get this missionary report kind of at the front end of as we start communicating. So we need to understand who would be reporting those people in. Oh, it happened in the middle of the night. We should expect it to come in from a disassociated ward bishop.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not sure what type of middle of the night events you anticipate, but let's say there's an earthquake. I'm not sure that would take down phone lines, but let's just say it did. There's an earthquake, it takes down phone lines. Missionaries, is it safe to be in the apartment? Do they need to be outside the apartment? Normally in the middle of the night, we don't want them out of their apartment. If it's a natural disaster, we want them to stay in their apartment. If it's civil disturbance and protests, we want them to be in their apartment, not out taking pictures. I don't think that there's one answer. Clearly, if they can go and report, we want them to do that. If it makes sense, well, let's do it in the morning and not in the middle of the night. I think our missionaries might wait until morning instead of being out but I don't know what. I'm curious to hear the wisdom of this committee who has probably thought through these things much more than we have.
Well, I don't know how wise this suggestion is, but it certainly serves a purpose to have the missionary shelter in place until they're contacted.
I agree.
Because first of all, we don't know, if there's an emergency, the last thing in the world you want to do is get in your car and drive someplace, because you don't know if the traffic lights are on or what the civil defense people are telling us to do and the emergency people. That's why car radios are kind of important in these situations, because that's where there's going to be a battery in your car and it's probably going to work, and you turn on those emergency stations and listen to what's going on. If they say shelter in place, you get back in your house, wait for somebody, and that way we'll be able to find them. If they're out trying to report here and there, we're going to have to track them down. So yeah, that would be my suggestion, that they shelter in place until they're accounted for.
I love that idea, Mike. That's an excellent idea, because it does minimize the amount of stress put on the system. And you can assign each ward to, hey, if it's between these hours, depending on the mission, the missionary in their area where they live, between these hours, you guys should go and contact them at their place of location. Or if it's between these hours, expect to find them at a church or a local leader's house, as it were. Does that sound right from the mission?
That is tricky. I know another personal experience is a storm that had many trees downed in Connecticut when we were living there. And I was trying to get home. It happened to be the very week our daughter was getting married. And I got to the point where I had one route left to get to my house. All of the other roads were blocked by trees down in the road, and I could not drive past them. And, had I not been able to get there on the one route that remained open, I don't know what I would have done. I would have been in my car. I certainly had phone service. So I do think, if it's in the middle of the day and the missionaries are out tracting, you're saying perhaps the plan is go to a church or to the bishop's house or a leader's house rather than their apartment. I suppose that that instruction is not currently on their card. We can certainly make an adjustment if we believe that is the best instruction for them to have. But is it going to vary from one stake to the next? Is it going to, how do we know that from one bishop or stake president to the next, it remains the same? Is there some consistent rule that applies, or because the areas vary so vastly. Alpine is so very different from, downtown San Diego, or you see that it may not, it might have to be specific to each area, which takes more coordination on our part.
I think from the mission's perspective, you can absolutely dictate at the very front of this, from today on, a standard procedure that will try and cover us for scenarios. And then as the Stringhams discover information that applies, hey, in Alpine, you guys are so rural out there, we would rather you do this. But hey, you guys down in PV or in downtown San Diego, we should probably have you do that. And that again would go into that white binder, and it would be up to the local missionaries to communicate that to the ward so that ward would know what to expect.
Yeah.
But from this point forward, you could just issue a standard order until the Stringhams find out the correct information and change that order.
Right. And so I think in I believe it was October, we kind of looked at our cards and we updated them. We established with our sister missionary, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe it was Sister Lanehart, and I think Brother Guyman, perhaps they spoke with you as they put this card together, which
Yes, they did.
unfortunately, is it Brother Torben? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's pink. It's not a white binder, but we want them to see it. So it's this hot pink flyer that they're all supposed to have in their apartments. So we can certainly, offline perhaps have that reviewed once again and see if our information needs to be a little bit more specific in particular areas, and fine tune what we have right now is a standard practice or procedure.
Yeah, I think that it's a very good idea as we move forward in this, especially concerning the missionaries, that the emergency response, emergency communication people for each ward should have a very good relationship with either the ward mission leader, and the ward mission leader should know where the missionaries live, should keep track of that, and he should notify. That should be a part of the emergency plan, and then also on transfer days, we certainly need to know, who's there and who's not there. And if an apartment's been opened or closed, I think that the emergency response and emergency communication people in each ward would be an important part of keeping track of that information. I know I always talk to the missionaries in my ward, and first question I ask them is not where they're from, but what have they been told to do in the case of emergency? And just to kind of keep to find out what's going on. And then I tell them who I am.
You're as nerdy as I am, Mike.
Oh, I'm nerdier than you. You're cool. You fly airplanes. Come on. Yeah. So, this meeting is great because we're really getting perspective from the mission, and getting them to get back to, if it happens when they're in their apartment, they should stay there. But if they're not, the question is, what do they do then? How is it safe for them to proceed? And if they're walking, they'll have a pretty good idea what's going on around them, whether it's safe to, try to go back to their apartment, or what they need to do to make a safe, to pray first, and try to receive inspiration as to what they should do, where they should go, what is safe for them to do. And that doesn't just work for the missionaries, of course. All of us in the callings that we have should be praying about what we should do and asking for inspiration on what the Lord would have us do. And not only will it help us in this very important work, but it'll also help us in our relationship with our Father in heaven. So I think that each ward should have somebody in that ward who's responsible for knowing where the missionaries live. They should be responsible for knowing when there's a transfer and what missionaries are there and what missionaries have gone. So I just ask the missionaries when they get transferred out, if they can remember to give me a call.
I think to add to that, Mike, is they should also understand with their conversations what those missionaries plan to do if there is a boots on the ground situation. So just so the Stringhams understand, and my analogy is this: I like to compare emergency readiness, especially a boots on ground scenario, to nuclear weapons. Expensive to build, expensive to maintain. You hope you never have to use them, but it's nice to plan for it. So there's a lot of planning that's going to go on in this, and we hope we never use it. So thinking about it's one of the important parts.
If Sister Merritt is still with us, this is Elder Stringham and Sister Stringham. I think looking at the card, we'll do, it's a 2017 card, we'll do a revision. And I think something that's important is the location or the event. If it's a location, for example, I saw the tsunami warning signs downtown. It said tsunami safety route. You know, in certain cases, it will be an immediate, they need to go to higher ground. In the event of an earthquake situation, they would need to get out of their apartment as soon as they can, just out onto the street for safety. In other words, we'll do an update on this for a few of those scenarios, with just a little note for some of those, which would be the same, what do you call it, when it's just common sense. In those situations, you do this. And that's that, and we'll look at updating a little bit differently.
Those are
And
called standard operating procedures, Brother Stringham. Just what to
Thank
do in case something happens.
thank you. Hey, my one question is, if they done a overall ham radio operator, just found out through all the stakes, all the wards, if we do have ham operator, do they have a big list of, or a small list, maybe it's just a few, of the few that we do have through the greater San Diego area?
Yeah, we know them all. All the
Excellent.
members who are, and they're not very many. They're not enough. Would you like to become one?
You
I
know,
have never-
he can get a list, and we can make sure that the missionaries, through their ward mission leader, can have a list of who those people are and know where they are. And if by chance the mission says, hey, if you're in your area and you're in a boots on the ground situation and ham is up, then walk over to these houses and you'll find a ham operator there, and you can report your status to the church.
Yes, all of the above. You know, the mission ought to have a ham radio, some kind of long distance radio that could link into the ham radios. I don't know if what Salt Lake, we'll do that. We will call Salt Lake and ask them what they do, what they suggest for missions, unless you already have information to give to us.
I think, Brother Stringham, in talking with the temple presidency, they are interested in working through Mike. They want to be linked in with Mike. And I think that Mike has a lot of local expertise, and he will be able to facilitate your needs as good as anybody else.
I was just saying, not to link us to Salt Lake, but just, are there any other instructions that they would give us for missions? Just protocol.
Well, we're operating on the information that we have received from the area. There is also a network of amateur radio operators who are in a long distance type of communication situation where they are contacting Salt Lake, but they're mainly contacting bishop storehouses, places like that. That is mainly what's happening with the other. In fact, I've checked in a couple of times and they said, oh, you're not on the list. So I go, okay, message understood. No, but because that's what the church is still involved with, is with the bishop storehouses. At the local level, at least our instructions in this area is that amateur radio operators will not be reporting to bishops or stake presidents. But that's not going to stop us from reporting to each other what we know. And that gives other people who might be able to listen to find out what we know. So that's one of the things that I'm putting in place. And we're focusing more on other types of radios. I think I've mentioned that already. So we'll have more information as we go along. And I think those are great questions. And we're working on those. Also, results will vary between stake and ward. Some bishops are not going to buy into a boots on the ground scenario as easily as others do. I know I think I was talking recently, I won't say who I think I was talking to, but what they said their bishop didn't want to do. I categorize it as there's monthly ministering and then there's emergency ministering. And we're going to train our stake emergency communications operators on ways to work with the wards and the stake and give this information to them. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Our satellite phones, they are good in an emergency situation, aren't they? Are they too expensive?
The church has specific guidelines on those, and the church does use them for, church business, church communication for bishop storehouses, but they're not recommended for ward stakes.
But as a missionary, if you ask your presidency, hey, do we need a satellite phone in the house? And should the staff in the house be trained to use that? That's absolutely a valid question for your mission presidency. And the more key question is, if we have one, who do I call? And does the church want to hear from me directly?
Yes, each set of those questions. Thank you. I'm making note of that.
Perfect.
I had a question. Do you
Yeah.
know, this is Steve Egbert, is there anyone in the mission home or the senior missionaries or even the missionaries that have a ham license? Is it 0 licenses, or are there licenses that members, I know they won't go get trained, but sometimes people have licenses and it'd be nice to follow them and know where they are.
Made note of that also. Thank you.
You're muted, Sister Merit.
Sorry. We do not have a ham radio operator that I'm aware of. We do have a number, probably a higher number than many missions of military relations senior couples. I don't know if any of them have had ham radio experience. Perhaps not. So
They'll know how to talk on a radio, though, and that's more than half of the battle. Using the radio is pretty minimal. Knowing how to talk on it and use it is pretty important.
Yeah. So, this is just an opportunity for us to get better organized. I think that, and actually the Stringhams have probably the old card. This one has the updated September 2022, which they did they were supposed to do through most of the apartments. And apparently our senior missionaries were going to need to check on that, which we may do at our next family home evening. But we certainly can do some fine tuning. And I think that this is the perfect opportunity for us to really, especially with a senior couple assigned to this task, to fine tune what we have in place and make it that much better and resilient for one of these scenarios that we've described where communications are down.
Something that I've told missionaries in our ward when they come in and they're new, I usually say, if there's an emergency, you contact by texting, whatever way, contact your stake president, your mission president immediately and let them know you're okay. Because as Mike's pointed out, the longer you wait, you may have more of a communication problem. And the other thing I point out to our missionaries is know the closest ward member to your apartment building, because you may need to rely on them for multiple things. If everybody's stuck in their home for a while or, need to stay close, they may need to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've told them.
And that should probably be in your SOPs and in the white binders or on that card is, because you're always moving areas, you need to have some situational awareness, and the church is real big right now in situational awareness when it comes to a lot of things, not just emergency readiness, but being prepared in a chapel, knowing your surroundings, et cetera, et cetera. And that's part of that white binder, and you might just have a sheet on there that has those contact numbers and it says nearest member and a blank line, nearest leadership, blank lines, just to clue those people in to increase their situational awareness.
Thank you. Good suggestion.
Okay, are there any other questions regarding this particular topic before we move on to the rest of the agenda?
So we did boots on the ground. Are we all in agreement, though, that if there is comms, that it's a standard comm plan and the mission has that covered on the pink card?
I think so.
Yeah,
I would say it's a work in progress, actually, at this point.
I think it is. What I'm thinking is that the Stringhams, or perhaps the Stringhams and myself, we can schedule some time for a review of this to fine tune with Brother Guyman, or maybe there's someone else you would suggest, but I think we need to be a little bit more specific about our boots on the ground, some of the nearby member, ham radio operators or whatever operators it might be. And we could certainly push it further with that information.
Great. Well, that was the purpose of bringing you here, was so that we could collaborate our best practices and get everybody on the same page and look for better ways to account for our missionaries. So we appreciate all that input. Thank you very much. And we look forward to continue to working with the Stringhams. And, like you say, it'll be a work in progress. And, we might come up with this is the best practice this quarter, and maybe we think of something else, next quarter or next year, and we'll continue to fine tune that as it needs to be. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next part of our agenda. For those that didn't hear me earlier, I did email an agenda out prior to the meeting, but it was only a half an hour prior to the meeting. If you didn't see it, just know it's sitting in your email. I notice, Brother Bonnet, that you're on the Zoom meeting with us tonight. So thank you, and we welcome you. And Brother Bonnet, you are the assistant to Mike Guyman. For those that didn't know, he's newly called to replace Brother Stephen Early. So I don't have all your contact information. It would be great if, and maybe you did this last meeting, and I apologize if it's the second time I'm asking, but if you could put that in the chat, we would greatly appreciate that. With that being said, I should ask Mike Guyman and Brother Bonnet, do you have anything at this point you want to talk about in regards to communications aside from what we were discussing with the missionaries?
Well, as far as I've had a chance to cover a lot of things that I did want to say earlier, but again, I want to reiterate that the boots on the ground, I'm referring to as emergency ministering. And there's not to be confused with monthly ministering. These are terms that I'm just using. They're not official church terms, but they work for me. And I think it makes it kind of easier to understand what we're talking about. Boots on the ground is kind of vague, but monthly ministering and emergency ministering will be training, as I said before, giving training to the stake emergency communications people about how to implement the boots on the ground, best ways to do it. We'll have information for them on how to create maps using tools that the church provides us. There is LDS Tools, that is an app that goes on your phone or your iPad. There's iOS or Android versions. And then the church website, churchofjesuschrist.org, also has a My Mapping feature that's a little bit different, but it provides a function that really helps to map areas and get lists created from it. And I know that Sister Blaylock sent a link to a mapping tool that she said they used, and it was helpful. So I'm going to talk to her. So this is a work in progress. It really is. The boots on the ground is a new focus. It's a good one. It's necessary. Our area President Elder Clark is concerned that we're not ready, and I would agree. And for that situations where nothing is working, and those and they're happening more and more across the country and around the world. We're very, very dependent on that infrastructure, and without it, we need to decide what the best thing for us to do is. And so, other than that, that's all I have to say. Byron, did you want to say anything?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you, Byron.
Okay. Um, let's see. Then just so you're aware, we do have a website. Again, this is in the agenda. I put the links in the agenda. And Sister Blaylock has been a wonderful addition on the Communication Council, not to be confused with communications, as the social media coordinator, and she has been helping us update that website. So that will be a work in progress, but it is up and running. Not that it hasn't been. I just wanted you to know that we'll be updating it probably within the next couple of months. So things will change a bit, but you should always have access to it. And there's also a Facebook page, the San Diego Coordinating Council Emergency Response. I put a link to that as well in your agenda. And if you did not get an email from me and you were invited to this meeting and you want that agenda sent to you with these links in it, please put your contact information in the chat tonight so that I can copy it and get it down. And if you do that, please tell me what your calling is, what ward and what stake you're in, and it'll just help me keep everything straight. So, but if you haven't been on our Facebook page before, we really want to encourage you to go on it, to follow it, and to like it. The Facebook page in itself has not been updated within the last few years. So there's some stagnant information, but we want now, again, with the assistance of Sister Blaylock, to keep that more current. And we do encourage you, if you've got great resources and information that can go on that site, to please share it with us as often as you want. And we'll sift through the pertinent information and put on keep updating that Facebook page. So anytime you see a post from us, if you could like it, tell other people about it, just help us spread that word. Social media is a big part of communication. And so we want to keep that with accurate and current information. There is also, just so you're aware, a group off of that Facebook page. And I've also put a link for that on the agenda. So that all, Sister Blaylock, I sent you admin privileges. I don't know if you had admin privileges before or not, but I don't know. Did you see that email recently?
Yes, I did, and I accepted that. I've
Okay.
been focusing on the website, and so
Sure. As you should. So I just want to make sure. But Sister Hernandez from the Riverside Stake has been the main contributor on the group page. And she throws a lot of different information on there. Recently, I saw that some other people had been allowed to be admins. I don't know if she did that or not. And I'm reaching out to her to get that to stop. It should just be you, me, and her and Brother Egbert as contributors. So any other things about social media, Sister Blaylock, that you want to share, or any questions anyone else has for Sister Blaylock or me on social media?
I think I think that as we get certain parts of the website ready, we will specifically send emails to you asking for your input in certain areas that we are seeking advice. And just know that when you go on, things will look different sometimes, and sometimes it might be a good look, and sometimes it might be not so good because we're working on it. So just bear with us as we go through this construction remodel.
Perfect. Anyone else? Okay, so if you haven't already been on the Facebook, again, if you guys could go on it, if not while we're talking now, when we're done here, sooner rather than later, because you'll forget. All right. So let's talk, I guess, on the next part. I'm on number 5 or 6 on the agenda, and it's talking about the bi-yearly communications exercises that we are encouraging. Again, some stakes have already been doing a spring communication exercise. Mike, I think we should determine a date that we would like to see them conduct a spring exercise. And so I don't know if you want to think about, do you remember the Poway stake, Mike DeGraw? When is your Poway stake spring exercise? It's like April 22nd or something like that. I can't tell if he's frozen or thinking. Mike DeGraw, are you with us from Poway Stake?
I'm sorry, you were talking to me. I think you were talking to Mike Diamond.
No.
And normally, I haven't seen the date, but it's normally a weekend around general conference.
Okay.
So normally, Brother Alan Truman usually fires off an email about a month early, announcing that the stake will be having the exercise. Like I said, it's usually around stake or general conference, and I think almost all the wards in the Poway stake participate. I don't believe there's any wards that are not participating.
Okay.
Of course, my ward is uses the radios and
right. Brother Griffin, do the Penasquita stake, do they also have a spring exercise? Marlon, are you still with us? So I think they have one as well, but Brother Guyman, I think we should come up with a specific date that we'd like them to target around, not that it has to be a hard date. But, depending on conferences and whatnot, what works best for them, the Saturday before, the Saturday after, that type of thing. What do you think?
I think it's always good to give a date to anything, I mean, on one hand, we want to give them flexibility with their stakes and wards, but if we pick a date, then we can say, please have it on this date, and if not, please do it on a date that fits your stake
Right.
schedule.
All right. So what date is general conference? April. Is it the first weekend usually of April? So
I
it'd
think
be the second.
the first and second, is it, or the?
That's what I'm seeing. So if we ask them to do a spring exercise on the 8th of April.
We could do that, or there's 15th. I mean,
I feel better about the 15th because at least that's 2 months from now. Right.
Yeah.
And the purpose with the spring exercise, I know there's going to be a little pushback on some stakes and wards about the boots on the ground. And it's that opportunity to have the exercise that's comfortable for them, whatever method they choose to use. We want them to hold an exercise that they are familiar with, and will have maximum participation. So, and we want to encourage from here going forward to always have a spring exercise as well as the fall exercise. But this fall will specifically focus on boots on the ground. That doesn't mean every fall we will focus on boots on the ground. It's a work in progress as well. So we're going to see how this goes. We anticipate again that some wards and stakes might not be able to participate fully. And that's okay too. That's kind of part of the plan, is to move forward with it. And if some don't, if that can't happen for them like they want, or they're just not ready to participate in that way, that's fine. That's still going to be part of our report. This many participated, this many didn't participate. So it's not going to be a deterrent.
So Terry,
yeah.
Are you going to now try to coordinate this multi-stake to be on the same date? So who normally sets it in our stake?
The date, usually Alan sets.
Okay, because that's normally coordinated all the way up to the stake president, and I don't know how they, they have something set up where they communicate that up the chain all the way to Salt Lake, from what I understood.
Right. And we will be, the stake president's reporting to at least Sister Jimenez.
Okay,
And where it goes after that, she usually contacts Elder Clark. Where it goes after Elder Clark, I don't know.
okay, so you want to try to coordinate this between all the stakes then?
Yeah, this will
Okay.
be a regular exercise. Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
So in preparation for our fall, again, we have set up the quarterly communication exercises. We started that last year and asked the stakes and wards to participate in different methods of communications. And then this year, the incremental steps will all be focused on building up to that fall boots on the ground. So for January through March, we had asked at the last Zoom meeting for each stakes to work on mapping and finding the best mapping program that they could create blocks or zones or whatever terminology you want to use within each ward, so that there was a close proximity for reporting boots on the ground. And Mike Guyman had sent out some best information on the different mapping methods, and he mentioned that earlier a few minutes ago as well. But if any of you know any other mapping things that have worked for you, certainly share that with us. And then another part of the January through March quarterly exercise was making sure that there are callings in place. Hopefully most of the stakes now have emergency response and emergency communication specialists, but if not, we're looking to fill those gaps as quickly as possible. But now as a stake emergency response specialist, we need you to follow up with your wards and see if you have bishops that have called ward emergency response specialists that you're collaborating with. We certainly want to have one in each ward, as well as a communication specialist. Then if you're working on your maps and your callings are in place, then it's identifying how are we reporting in zones? Are there block captains, or who's doing what, and figuring that piece out.
Hey, Terry.
Yes.
Last month, I think Mark Jacobson, I don't see him here tonight, but
Yeah.
he came up to the house and we collaborated a little bit, and the guy that maintains the ward spreadsheet for our ward, I was sharing with him. So I talked to Dan, who maintains that, and he was open to sharing that at the specialized spreadsheet that he made using the old church geocodes with any stake that wanted to use it. It's fairly simple to use. You just he shows you how to actually do an extract out of the old MLS program to a stake that any ward clerk can do. You just drop it into the spreadsheet. You can assign them block captains and your own geocodes. So he maintains that for me in my stake, but has offered up if other stakes want to use that or the wards want to use that, just reach out to me and we'll help them with that.
Can you put your contact information in the chats right now?
You bet.
Okay. But for this quarterly exercise, there is no reporting or using the chain of command. It's simply, starting with the basics in your mapping, your callings, and getting your zone set up, identifying who the block captains are going to be, setting up that base. Are there any questions about that?
Well, one of the things that I'd like to add to that part, it really has to do with mapping. We have been working, as I mentioned earlier, with the tools that the church provides us. One of the challenges with creating spreadsheets with member information is that it has to be secure. And so, wards can do what they like, but there are tools that we're finding and discovering that help with mapping, and also help that you can make maps with especially with the LDS Tools app. You can create lists, and with those lists, you can make maps that will show you where everybody is. Basically in your area. Once you visit them, you'll know where they are. But the cool thing about LDS apps is that when your ward clerk updates the ward information, then the LDS app will, if people move out, they'll be gone. They will not be on your list anymore. So that helps keep track of who moves out, and it also lets us do some other things that are really cool. And we'll be giving some training on that. But this just a word of caution about keeping church membership information, what do I say, safe and secure. And a lot of people are very sensitive about it, but
PII, Mike, PII.
Okay.
If you know, it's funny.
Okay. Is anyone started on this part of the quarterly exercise, the mapping, the ward callings, making sure those are in place? Do you have anything to report on your progress? Yes, Brother Guidman.
I'm sure if somebody else is, I've said enough, but maybe if somebody else has some, I know Mike DeGrasse, I mean, they're so far ahead of everybody that I'm aware of right now. I would be interested in hearing any ideas that he has about the mapping. He just shared one with us. But the main thing is that, stay tuned, because we're going to be training all of our our stake emergency communication specialists, giving them training on how to do these things. And when you introduce this idea to leadership, whether it be stake or ward, we need to make sure that we will help them, that they know that we will help them. We will help them do the hard stuff. We will train the people. One of the approaches that I like to use is I call the stake president and tell him who I am. By the way, my calling, for those of you who don't know, is for the emergency communication coordinator for the entire mission. And
Communications, don't forget the S.
yeah, that's such an effective way of distinguishing them. I don't know why I forget that all the time. But emergency communications coordinator. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, contacting stake president first and letting them know who I am, or the emergency communications specialist of that stake can call the stake president, said this, we got this new program going on, and I want you to know that I'm trained in how to do it. And I'd be happy. Would it be okay with you if I contact the bishops in the wards in the stake and offer help to them as well and help you out with this? And they will say, oh, absolutely. That's fantastic. Go to the bishops, ask them the same thing. Tell them who you are, emergency communications specialist. We have this new program, emergency ministering, that we want to implement, that the Elder Clark wants us to implement. Would it be okay? We ask each bishop, will it be okay if I work with your Relief Society president, your Elder Quorum president, and help them and train them and help them do it? And they will say, okay. And then, by the way, when I called the bishop, I said, I'm calling you on behalf of your stake president. He's given me permission to contact you and help you with this new program. And then on down the line, by the way, I'm calling you. The bishop has asked me to give you a call and see if I can offer help, so that, we don't want to introduce something and they look at it and go, oh my goodness, we're not doing this. I'm not on board with this, because once they say no, it's going to be hard to change it over. So just remember, anytime you talk to anybody about this, let them know that the area is providing training on effective and simple ways to make this happen.
Another selling point, Mike, is also that I've found is effective is by mapping out the ward, it gives a kind of distribution spread so that the priesthood can find out where they can send people to pick up fast offerings. Makes it easy for the deacons not to, have to go all over the place. They can do a kind of a general area. So the young men really like it as well, because it allows them to get those fast offerings set up.
Yeah, using lists in the LDS Tools app, you create a list and you can send emails to everybody on the list, or you can make a map from that list. It's really, really cool.
Are we going to talk about this next Tuesday? Mike, I still have the question as to if the map is the maps in apartments are never right unless someone moves them there. I know every member has the power to move their position to where they live in an apartment.
Right.
I know
we'll discuss that on Tuesday and
yeah,
hammer out
yeah,
a lot of little details that we need to hammer out, but we're
Yeah.
getting started with it tonight.
okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. One of the things too that we ask for when I'm talking about the callings in the wards and the stakes being in place, The next part of the emergency response program is holding a council within your stake or the ward. And we call it the Emergency Response Council, where you're inviting your priesthood leadership, you're facilitating the meeting, and also inviting the auxiliary heads so that you're working on this emergency response plan together. So when we're talking about this upcoming communications exercise, if you're holding these quarterly meetings, this is where you're looping everybody in and getting them to collaborate, especially your ward clerks, because they should be part of that council as well, holding the key to your membership records and getting that information. And then when you're talking about mapping, everybody's on the same page. So that's a key component. I hope that if you're here and you're an emergency response specialist, that you've been able to facilitate a meeting. I know Poway Stake held a meeting. You should have another one coming up, Mike DeGraw, right? A quarterly meeting.
Yeah, I was planning for just after Easter in April.
Okay. So then the rest of the agenda talks about the incremental steps for April to June and July to September, where you're adding your chain of your reporting chain to it, starting with the bishopric in the second quarter and then adding the stake president in the third quarter before you hold your drill in October, where you're then finally reporting up to Sister Jimenez. Other than that, are there any questions? Yes.
Just one real quick one. I just mentioned the comment. It was one of the brethren said something about people living in apartments can request. Can you elaborate a comment on that? Whoever that was.
This is Steve. I know that when Mike and I were working on this last month, in fact, you probably should get yourself invited to Brother Guyman's meeting the first Thursday. I think we're going to go over it in more detail, but I learned that I could not put, I minister to lots of people in apartments, and generally the church's GIS and the tools puts people in apartments at the corner, on a corner of a large apartment complex. They need, in order to move them to the apartment they actually belong, only a few people have privileges to do that. One is that the member themselves, if they go into their tools, can move their position to their correct apartment, or the clerk can do that. So I've had the clerk take my ministering route and properly put everyone in the right building that they belong in, which is much more useful than just knowing it's in a complex. And the member can do that themselves. A member can move their location around themselves, but members in between members do not have privileges of relocating people.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on, but just to make sure I didn't miss anyone, was there anyone that had anything to share about any successes, progress that they've been making? Okay. Then let's just recap something we asked the stake emergency response specialists to work on is creating, as you're going along in this process, whether you're doing it for the first time or you've been doing this for a while, writing down what it is you do, making an operations manual so that you can pass on in case you are changed in your calling and someone new comes in. The three basics anyways, that I was considering, and you can fill in others that you think of, is adding your networking contacts, people you're networking with in the community, and their information, their contact information. Your emergency response council quarterly meeting notes, of course, the emergency response plan for your stake or ward, updating your rosters on who the ward emergency response specialists are and their contact information. So that the person coming in behind you, doesn't have to start from scratch. Maybe provide a working model or calendar of preparedness for the stake. And make sure you pass it on to the ward level. And then when you leave your position, make sure that you sit down and have a meeting with the person replacing you. Whether you're sharing with them the binder that you've made or the operations manual or whatever, or just having that eyeball to eyeball conversation as to what you do and how you do it, so that they, again, don't have to start from scratch. So that's that. Any suggestions or thoughts on that? Okay, then just reminding you that we will have the in-person training for emergency response for the region on Saturday, September 16th in this year. And Mike Guyman, you say that the building has been calendared, and that is the Mount Abernathy building, is that right?
Yes, yes, the day before for setup.
Okay. Perfect. All right, so in the time that we are, let's see, we're actually over time already, aren't we? Well, we've had a good conversation. Is there anything, stakes or wards that you have to report? Events that you've had lately, events that you have coming up? Okay, and how about anybody attend? Oh, go ahead, Brother Bostic.
Yeah, this coming March the 4th, our stake is we're hosting a ham radio operator training on the March the 4th all day. So it's being hosted at our stake center. So right now we have about 15 people signed up, and we have room for more. So it's being held on March the 4th.
Okay. And what building is that? You say your stake center?
At the San Diego East Center District.
Okay. And who's running that class?
The ham operator team.
The San Diego ham classes? Jay Goldberg?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's an all-day session, and at the end of the session, you can take the test to get your ham operator license.
Right.
So we're very excited about that.
Okay, thank you. And did anyone attend VOAD? Did they have a meeting this month? Stephen Egbert, do you know?
I believe they had a meeting. I was unable to attend.
Mike DeGraw?
I might have attended.
I was unable to attend, I'm sorry.
I don't think I saw a notice of them having one, so I know I didn't forward anything out. Jerry Hansen sometimes attends it, but he's not on the call tonight. Stephen Egbert, you didn't attend it though. Did you get an invite, Stephen?
I don't think I did. I attended other meetings like Fire Safe. You should add Fire Safe as one of the important meetings that the state ERCs can go to.
And that's true. And again, as an emergency response specialist, we do hope that you are networking with, we're concentrating on this boots on the ground drill, but we're part of the calling is to be networking with your community and being looped into whatever that emergency plan is, which is why VOAD is important to attend. And Fire Safe Council is another big one. I know the Griffins, you're on the Penasquitos Fire Safe Council. And we would encourage, if you don't know about it, you can go online and ask for a Fire Safe Council in your area. And each Fire Safe Council is linked to its own, most of them have their own website. And
It's county. If you go to the San Diego
Right.
county, it will list all the communities, about like 30 communities that have fire safe councils, and clearly they're mainly operating in places that have had fire disasters in the past, mainly East County and Canyon's part of San Diego.
Yeah. So we would encourage you to network with them.
Another one is like that, is there's the earthquake people that have monthly meetings. And so we're all involved in earthquakes. You don't have to attend all of these, but it's good to know when the meetings are, and if you have time to attend, and you learn things that affect, you don't know, you don't realize that SDG&E and all these utility, a lot of these utilities have plans for disasters, and it's good to know what those plans are and how they affect your stakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that being said, I should throw in the office, San Diego Office of Emergency Services. Don't forget to partner with them or look them up. They have all sorts of resources, free printed material that you can pick up from them. They're in the Kearney Mesa area, and distribute to your ward members. Use at stake emergency fairs, different situations like that. They have planning guides to magnets to, just about anything you could want on any of those scenarios that we've talked about. So
they're very extremely helpful. I went and stopped by and I asked information for my ward, and they come out and they loaded a big box of all the material. They're very, very helpful. Very, very helpful.
Yeah. So good resources. And if you have any questions about that, you can always, again, reach back to Brother Guyman or Brother Egbert or myself. Mickey Cross is on our Emergency Response Council as well, and knows a lot of that. So then is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you have questions about before we end? Well, thank you everyone for being on the call. We certainly appreciate your collaboration and sharing of information. And at this point, I'm going to ask if we could have a closing prayer. And I'm hoping that Sister Blaylock, would you be willing to give our closing prayer tonight?
Sure try.
Oh, that's right, your voice. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Our dear Father in heaven, we're so grateful for this opportunity to have attended this important meeting this evening. We pray that as we leave, that all of the many concepts and ideas and requests that have been shared this evening that we're able to identify and take those into our calendars and to take them into our hearts and identify ways that we can do the things that need to be done in our callings. We're grateful for the leaders that have so much expertise and are so willing to share and help us develop so that we can respond accordingly in an emergency situation. We love this work and we want to be prepared, and we want to be able to do things as you would have us do. So please bless each of us that we can go our way and do the things that need to be our teams in our local areas, and that we can come back again next month and have wonderful things to share. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for all our guests for attending, and have a good evening. Again, reach back if you have any other questions, and we'll send out the minutes and the recording of this as well. So if there's someone that wasn't here that you think needs to know any of the information we've discussed, then you can forward it out to them. Thank you.
Hey, Jason, are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I lost the mute button.
So Jason, are you a pilot?
Oh, I am.
Commercial?
I am now. I fly for United. I did 24 in the Marine Corps.
Oh, great. Good to know. I'm not commercial, but I'm a pilot.
I do like flying. It is a lot of fun. Although it's taking a lot of my time right now. So
Yeah.
Hey,
how'd that
Terri,
meeting go the other day, Mike? Speaking of missing meetings on Sunday.
Which meeting?
Which Mike?
Wasn't there a multi-state event where a couple of the presidents were going to get together and talk about, maybe it's next month?
I wasn't aware of it.
Okay.
I was out of town, so.
But do tell, we're all interested now.
Well, I know Brother Walton. I got Brother Walton kind of interested in collaborating with the guys to the north and Carlsbad to the south. That's such a big area down south that we're a little concerned about bleed over. So I'm trying to encourage him to talk to his buddies and see what their plans are, because that's also the same mission, right? So we're worried about those missionaries in that area as well, because we talked to the temple presidency, and they're like, I don't know what you want us to do exactly. And we're like, no, we're asking you how you want help. And they're like, oh, I don't, they were surprised we were asking them how we could help them. So they're still working on figuring out how their response is going to be. So I think getting the leadership to talk is pretty important, because, we can only do so much.
True.
Yeah, and I think the temple should be concerned about a vast array of situations that might be where they might need some help, as the feelings toward the church from most of the.
Well, my big concern is, if something goes down, how do we mobilize members and get them on the temple grounds, right? How do we just surround the temple with bodies? I think that's the biggest issue that they don't have a grasp on. Everything else is kind of in their SOPs that they've got from other temples. But that security piece, civil unrest, as it were, how do we get some bodies around that temple to quell the thirst to get inside the building, as it were?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, as we look at emergency response, the first thing we remember is we are not 911.
Yeah.
We're not,
Yep.
Take care of yourself first. Get out of danger.
Yeah. So I don't know how we would, and what we would do if we were there.
Yep. Yeah, but
That's a
when you
good
asked the question, they were like, and I'm like, so we were all humming together.
Nice
All
mantra.
right, thanks. Mike Guyman, anywhere I can help out, let me know.
I appreciate it, Mike. You've got so much going up in your area, and
Yes, you do.
we
Yes,
really
it
want
is.
to tap into you as a resource to help us. The more people we have, I mean, you've got this under control for the most part. You know what the challenges are, and you'll have suggestions as we go and help other wards and stakes get involved with it. And it's just like we were kind of doing a test. I'm trying to get everybody to install LDS tools and get their account up to date as far as Church of Jesus Christ .org, and as they try and use it, they figure out things that I haven't experienced yet. So the more
I'd like to
people
know
that
how
use
that
it,
works.
yeah.
I think actually Mark Jacobson came up to the house and we actually did the radio check on the repeater, and I gave him a radio and we played around with it a little bit, and I showed him how I mapped out our ward and our state boundaries, and then helping him with a spreadsheet. So I hope he takes the ball and runs with it, because I think he was trying to do a lot of that on his own, and a lot of it's already done.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, is that everybody needs to communicate what they have and be willing to share it. And we will be having with the emergency communications specialist for the stakes, we'll be having a meeting we're starting to have them on the first Tuesday, and maybe I could invite you to that, and you could chime in and share experience. And for instance, how you did mapping. I'm going to call Beverly Blaylock. I'm going to look at the link that she sent to see the map that they used, but your input would be helpful, because that's really, I mean, when you look at this, you go, oh my goodness, we're going to have to, this is a whole, I mean, it's the same people, but certainly don't assign them the same way. You don't want to eliminate monthly ministering. It's not like we're just abandoning it and we're going to
Yeah.
start making assignments. I mean, the bishop that was that wasn't on board with this said, no, I'm not going to stop assigning people by need. You know, we're not going to just eliminate that and go to geographic. And
They have to understand the geographics, though. I mean, we are going to get just severed. If we're talking about boots on the ground, the arteries are going to be severed, and geographics it.
right. That's true. And so getting a good feel for geographics, and I think the church actually has some tools that make that pretty simple.
Yep.
Pretty simple to do with the list on the app, and then the list on the .org site. I think it's called My Map. You can look at your ward, and then the farther out you are, the fewer dots there are.
Yep.
And at first I was looking at that as, well, that's a nuisance. I have to zoom in to see who's in there. But no, it's actually great because there are fewer dots. And when you click on it, it gives you a list of everybody who's in that particular part of your map. So
Yep.
you just copy those names down, put them in. The .org does not do lists and make personal maps for you, but the LDS tools does. All you have to do is start a list, and you put that list in there, and it will create a map for you of all the people on that list, and also send email to them, all them on that list.
Yeah, our young man president loved that feature because he was
Yeah, I'd
able
like to
to
see that.
assign
Yeah,
routes for deacons to walk.
It really works out well for, for fast offerings for sure.
Yeah.
But so we have these tools, and we need to let all the leaders know, all the way down the line from the stake president down to the Relief Society and the Elders Quorum president, that it's doable and we can help them, and it has been done. And that it updates. Like I said, people move out, it updates. They're just gone from your list. And you look at your list and you go, wait a minute, what happened to so-and-so? And then you call the Elders Quorum president and say, did they move? The Elders Quorum president that doesn't, it's not as helpful with adding people, but the Elders Quorum president, who should get that information on a regular basis anyway, the moves in and the move outs, he should then determine where they live and then call the block captain for that area and say, add this name to your list. And
Well,
when you do, it'll automatically show up on your map.
the other problem that and some bishops want to ignore this, because like the San Diego ward, the first ward that's downtown with all the high rises, if somebody moves to San Diego and they don't have an address for them, but they know they went to San Diego, regardless of where they live in San Diego County, they get assigned to that ward. That ward constantly has 900 people on the rolls,
Wow.
because if they come to San Diego, they get assigned to that ward. So, I mean, their clerk is just, he's one pissed off dude all the time, because he just has random people that all the way from Escondido or Oceanside, they're all in his ward, and it's just infuriating. Or if you're talking about a ward that's got like Pacific Beach, that's got 60,000 people within its boundaries and like 800 something people on the rolls, and there's, an average of 250 in church. That's a lot of dots that are difficult to randomize. So you're kind of calling out the clerks a little bit when you're asking them to throw these dots on the maps. But I think it's important that the bishops see that data in a visual way so they can see those clusters.
We had difficulty because the way that they were maintaining our geocode map before, they had all the do not contacts in just one area, or just in one section of the spreadsheet, it just said the word clerk.
Yeah.
And so I had them change that recently to put all the do not contacts in the actual geocode where they would normally be. And then I met with all the block captains and said, showed them their list and said, on your list, when you have the do not contacts, don't, during the exercises, obviously don't contact them. But if we had a real emergency, then yes, you definitely.
They're probably going to want to contact.
Go knock on their door and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure they wouldn't, mind somebody coming and checking up on them in the middle of the night if there was a fire or earthquake or something.
That's right.
Well, that was the point I was trying to make, is that it sounds like in our ward, when they show up in some apartment building, they get all piled up on one corner in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And it sounds like if they get sent to San Diego, they get put in an address the standard address of San Diego, which is in that one stake. It's not that they're assigned to that stake, it's that their address for anyone who goes to San Diego is one spot
Yep.
in the whole city. And so they all are on top of each other, and it looks like one dot, but it really is a dot with maybe 500 families on it.
Well, Stephen, we have a ward that is essentially all apartments. It serves UCSD and it's right there by the temple. You can't believe how many piles of dots you got right there on those apartment buildings.
Well, they can be moved. Well, as I pointed out, the
Yeah.
person that lives there can move them and the clerk can move them, but the home teacher or the missionaries who actually needs to use that,
Yeah.
find where they are,
Can't do
is
it.
not allowed to move them.
Yeah. Hey, Terry, we're not going to VOAD if you're not there, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, well, it's all on Zoom, right? So.
Yeah, but
Still not
we assume
going.
we assume you're taking attendance and you're not there. No one is absent, so they don't show up anymore.
Cats away, mice will play.
Okay.
I gotta go. See everybody.
I'm off, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Talk to you later.
All right, Terry, I'll try to get this meeting to you tonight.
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Okay.
before you turn it off, did you need to pull the stuff out of the chat room?
Well,
Or
I pushed save chat.
Okay.
I
'Cause once
usually
you shut
ignore it,
down,
but I
the
don't know where to
chat
look
goes.
for it. Maybe
Chat
that
goes away.
Yeah, I've copied down some numbers because I've never really tried saving chat before.
Anybody know who the Thurmstons were? I didn't even know who that was.
No, but I have his phone number and his call sign,
Oh, there's a call sign even, huh?
KI6VO. Yeah,
Hey,
VOW.
I got a question. I wanted the string. I gave the Stringham as a private chat. Since he was interested in mapping, I went, while he was talking, I went to look to see if I have addresses of the missionaries. I do not. I do not have geolocations of the missionaries and LDS tools. I'm assuming the missionaries have geolocation of the members, but I wanted to confirm that. I was wondering if he has geolocation of if he has a LDS tools that has the addresses of his missionaries, so he can make maps of his missionaries. In other words, if he can use what we're learning, Brother Diamond.
Well, I was kind of looking at that during the conversations. And this is interesting. Sister Rose Ernstrom. Wasn't that name on tonight? The Ernstroms?
Stringhams were there. That's one I remember.
The Stringhams, that's right. Where did I see the other name?
Well, that could be
Maybe it's coming off of this that I looked at. So, okay. So I'm looking here at the ward mission leader and ward missionaries, and that's all we get. We don't get any of the missionaries' address, although I did see them somewhere. I'll have to look again. I think I remember seeing an address for full-time missionaries. Maybe it's on the other. Maybe it's not.
I went in my ward directory to see. I went to my full-time missionaries, and there's like email, phones, but there was no address.
Well,
there was
if you
no
can email
address.
them, then you got their address.
But no, that doesn't help me. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it
but
does, because then you put them on a list.
well, they'd have, yeah. Can you put a non-member on a list?
I don't know,
You cannot put, I don't think you can put missionaries on your list.
but at least we'll have their address so that we can tell the person who has that area that, these are the first people you go to.
How would you get their address on your LDS tools?
Well, you don't.
Where your map is.
Well, you don't. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't, but you call the person the block captain that's assigned to that area.
Yeah.
Say, we can't put this on your list because it has to pop up from the data that's within the LDS tools.
Right.
But to say this, this is who you want to go to first. So print out, do a screen capture and put them on your map
Yeah.
Write it in red and, but like I say, once you visit the families, you know where they are for the most part. I mean, you have their addresses and so the maps are kind of cool because it helps you decide, where you're going to go first, maybe what makes the most sense to make it the quickest. You don't want to go to somebody in the middle and backtrack to somebody else. So once you make that map, you go, okay, this is closest. I start there and I work my way around and then I come back. But no, I mean, yeah, they are the first ones we're supposed to visit. So, and it kind of boils down to this, I think, as far as missionaries, either if they're home, they should stay there. And if it's safe, they should probably go to the nearest facility. And those are the instructions that most missionaries are given, is to go to the nearest facility.
Right. Of course, Sister Mary had an example where they were taken out of the mission completely. They